कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी निति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देश तारिणे नमो महावदन्याय कृष्ण प्रेम प्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्ण चैतन्य नाम्ने गौरकृषे नमः। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधो दीनबंधो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्यश्च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. So today is very auspicious day of Bhadra Purnima. So all our ISKCON devotees are celebrating, especially by distributing Srimad Bhagavatam, the literary incarnation of the Supreme Lord. And certainly Bhagavad Gita is also literary incarnation of the Supreme Lord, because these are the direct, immortal, nectarian words of Supreme Lord Shri Krishna. And so there is Bhagavad Gita is like preliminary study for Srimad Bhagavatam. And so last time we completed uh, fifth chapter, the Karma Yoga. Again, there was again Karma Yoga chapter was there, fifth one. And in that chapter, fifth chapter, Krishna, he described how to attain liberation by Nishkama Karma Yoga and also by Ashtanga Yoga. He described very briefly in 27th and 28th verse. Now, in this chapter, Krishna describes Ashtanga Yoga in greater detail as a means to control the mind and the senses. So, before practicing the advanced stages of Ashtanga Yoga, one must be purified by the practice of Nishkama Karma Yoga. So, however, Ashtanga Yoga is very difficult for people in general to perform, especially in this age of Kali. Thus, before teaching Ashtanga Yoga, the culmination of Karma Yoga, Krishna first he talks about Nishkama Karma Yoga again in first two verses because of its practicality. So this is a link between previous chapter and this chapter, that again previous chapter Krishna has introduced Ashtanga Yoga, and this chapter again Krishna is going to talk about Nishkama Karma Yoga in the beginning. Why? Because a person cannot directly take to Ashtanga Yoga because it is little difficult. So उससे पहले that's why Krishna again speaks about Nishkama Karma Yoga in first two verses. So okay, so please recite first verse. Darshan Prabhu, can you allot?
Deepak Sudhar. दीपक सुथार प्रभु. Hare Krishna. दीपक सुथार प्रभु. Okay. धैर्यवान राम प्रभु.
Yes, Bhuvan. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Sri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Anasvitaha karma phalam.
Anashvitaha karma
Karyam karma karoti yaha.
karyam
Tasannyasi cha yogi cha.
सन्न्यासी च योगी च
Naniragnir na chakriyah.
नानिराग्निर्नक्षत्रियः.
Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, one who is unattached to the fruits of his work and who works as he is obligated within the renounced order of life, and he is the true mystic, not he who lights nor fire and performs his duty.
Yeah. Please read purport.
Yes, Lord. Purpose. In this chapter, the Lord explains that the process of the eightfold yoga system is a means to control the mind and the senses. However, it is very difficult for people in general to perform, especially in the age of Kali. Although the eightfold yoga system is recommended in this chapter, the Lord emphasizes that the process of karma yoga or acting in Krishna consciousness is better. Everyone acts in this to maintain his family and their paraphernalia, but no one is watching without some self-interest, some personal gratification. He is concentrated or distinguished. This criterion of perfection is to act in Krishna consciousness and not with a view to enjoying the fruits of God.
Yes,
So
that's it.
what-
Thank you. That's it. That's it. Thank you. Yeah. So, Krishna again emphasizing how a person has to perform his duty. So, one who performs his duty and is unattached to the fruits of the work and is actually a sannyasi and yogi also. Hmm. Not just one who does not light a fire or performs your duty. So simply, basically, so today is also the day where Srila Prabhupada accepted sannyas. So there is some discussion about sannyasi. uh, so basically, Prabhupada today morning also we are hearing one quote wherein Prabhupada also says that it is not simply by changing dress that one becomes a sannyasi, some kind of formality, but the mentality of sannyas or a yoga is being mentioned by the Supreme Lord here. So somebody who performs his duty in an unattached manner is also a yogi or sannyasi. So Prabhupada in the beginning itself, right at outset, very clearly tells that this Ashtanga Yoga system is very difficult for people in general to perform, especially in the age of Kali. So although there are so many yoga classes, the yoga has become very, very popular in the world. But most of the times, what people call yoga, when they say yoga, we are going for yoga, we are doing yoga, they are taking only one limb of yoga, that is yoga asana. That's it, which is the third limb of yoga. But yoga is much more than that. And that particular Ashtanga yoga is not very easy for people in Kali Yuga. So right at outset, Prabhupada clarifies it. So although Prabhupada says that it is recommended, but still in the beginning itself, Lord is also emphasizing Karma Yoga. And in this way, performance of Karma Yoga is more easy and practical. So Prabhupada says how everyone acts in this world to maintain his family, but somebody he acts with not with the view of enjoying the fruits of work, that is a person who is acting in karma yoga or Krishna consciousness, and he is as good as sannyasi or he is as good as a yogi. So generally people want to act for self-interest. Everybody works on this particular channel called as WIIFM channel, isn't it? You all know this channel. What is in it for me? So behind every action there is a particular gain or result or a fruit one wants to enjoy. There is some personal gratification behind every particular action a person does in this world. So sometimes it may be concentrated gratification that is for one's own body and mind, or sometimes it is extended. So that same gratification extend towards one's family or country or community. So that way. But after all these are different forms of sense gratification, and generally a motivation for a person in this world to function is to engage into sense gratification. But somebody who acts, without that purpose, only for the sake of the Supreme Lord, or just for performance of duty, such a person is as good as sannyasi, in whichever ashram he may be. So previously also we discussed how Prabhupada also termed, you remember we discussed about Rupanuga Prabhu. Prabhupada told that, Rupanuga Prabhu asked Prabhupada that should I take sannyas, Prabhupada? Everybody is taking sannyas, should I also take? And Prabhupada said, what is the need? You are already a sannyasi as well. Although you are in a sort of, still your activities are no less than sannyasi. Similarly to Yamuna Mataji, Prabhupada had also told that you can act in the spirit of sannyas. So Prabhupada further says how the parts of the body, they act for the function of the whole body. They cannot act for the self-satisfaction, but they have to act for the satisfaction of complete whole. So if the hand holds rasgulla and says, I will enjoy it myself, that is not possible. Hand cannot, how much you are long, the hand may hold rasgulla and press it. The hand cannot enjoy rasgulla. So hand has to put rasgulla in the mouth and in the stomach. Then only the whole body will be satisfied and even the hand will be satisfied. So we know that there is a story of senses going on the strike. You all must have heard this, that how one day senses decided that we all are working so hard. This only one fellow stomach is the only enjoying everything. The story comes in Panchatantra, as far as I know. So they decided we'll not cooperate. We'll not cooperate with this stomach now. We will act independently. And in this way, all the senses went on strike. But what was the reason? For some time, the senses realized that they themselves were becoming weak and powerless. And they realized that independently we cannot be happy and nourished. Our nourishment depends on stomach. So, same way, Prabhupada says that the living entity who acts for the satisfaction of the Supreme Whole and not for personal satisfaction, he is a perfect sannyasi and a perfect yogi. That person can be actually happy and satisfied in his life, and he acts as a perfect sannyasi and yogi. So then further Prabhupada tells, so of course I don't know whether we have this experience of any other sannyasis than ISKCON. So these are, talking about some sannyasis which are not in ISKCON. ISKCON sannyasis are really expected to work very hard for the preaching mission. But sometimes there are sannyasis called as karma sannyasis. So what karma sannyasis, they think that they have become liberated from all material duties. And that's why they give up all their duties like fire sacrifices, etc., etc. But Prabhupada says that although they may say that we have become free from all their desires, but they have very great desire. What is that great desire? They are actually also selfish because they want to become God, or they want to become one with impersonal Brahman. So So although it is greater than other desires, material desires, but it is not without self-interest. So in this way, somebody practices jnana and tries to take sannyas, he also has some personal self-interest. He is not free from self-interest. Similarly, a mystic yoga practitioner, they also desire a lot of siddhis. They may perform mystic yoga, Ashtanga yoga, but they also are very much interested in siddhis, ashta siddhis. So that's how these are not exactly the criteria of a real sannyasi and yogi, which Krishna is mentioning in this verse. But Prabhupada says that a person who acts in Krishna consciousness, he does not work for his personal self-satisfaction, but he acts only for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. And in this way, uh, because he is not acting for self-satisfaction, what is his criteria? His criteria of success is satisfaction of Krishna. कृष्णार्थे अखिल चेष्टा, कृष्णा के प्लेजर के लिए सब कुछ करते हैं. So that is what a devotee does. Devotee acts only for the pleasure of Krishna, and in this way Prabhupada says that he is perfect sannyasi and perfect yogi. So not just an external formality, but the motivation, it is also very important. What is the motivation of a person? So Prabhupada also tells how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the best example of such a renunciate, who says the famous shloka, na dhanam, na janam, na sundarim, kavitam va jagadish kamaye, mama janmani janmanishware, bhavatat bhakti rahe duki tvai. So that's what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu depicted. He did not want anything, not even liberation, because janmani janmanishware. In one of the lectures, Prabhupada was telling that he says janmani janmanishware means what? He is not liberated. So janmani janmanishware means he is not liberated. So that means he is ready to take birth also. He is not desiring even liberation. But what is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's prayer? Let me just render devotional service unto you, the Supreme Lord. So that was the only motivation of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So in this way, this is the first verse of this particular section of 6th chapter. The first section, which will go till 9th verse, advancing in Ashtanga Yoga with Aruruksha to Arudha stage. So the beginning stage of Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, is called as Aruruksha stage, and the advanced stage is called as Arudha stage. So this verse, Krishna describes who is a real sannyasi and yogi. Yeah. So although one who takes sannyas ordinarily gives up performing fire sacrifices, but here for the third time, Krishna has asserted that importance of not giving up the work. So a real renunciate is a true mystic. They perform their duty, but they renounce the fruit of their duties. That is Krishna's request to Arjuna. So here the word na niragnir and na chakriyaha. So lights no fire refers to Brahmanas. One of the typical duty of a Brahmana is to perform Agnihotra, daily fire sacrifices. But Krishna is explaining that one who is unadvanced, he thinks, I have knowledge. I don't try to perform my duty of performing sacrifices. That is the symptom of a person who is not advanced. But a really advanced person, he performs his duties with detachment. So in this way, Krishna is again repeating this point before starting Ashtanga Yoga system, so that one will not become confused. Although Ashtanga yogis eventually go to the forest after renouncing their prescribed duties, Krishna wants to make it clear that Ashtanga yogis, like Nishkama Karma yogis, must first of all perform detached work before they are advanced enough to renounce the world. So as we discussed, that even an Ashtanga yogi should begin not abruptly practicing Ashtanga yoga, but first purify himself through Nishkama Karma yoga, That is by performing their prescribed duties without attachment. So first they should renounce the fruits of their activities, and eventually they may renounce the activities and then go to forest. Hmm. And then they can give all their duties like that. So now in the second verse, Krishna is going to explain the relationship between sannyas and yoga. So please recite second verse.
दीपक सुतार प्रभु.
यम संन्यासम इति प्राहुर
Yam sannyasam
Samiti Prahu
योगम तम विद्धि पांडव
yogam
Pandava
न हि असन्न्यस्त संकल्पो
nahi
यो- योगे भवति कश्चन.
yogi bhavati
Shana
Translation: what is called renunciation you should know to be the same as yoga or linking oneself with the Supreme, O son of Pandu. For one can never become a yogi unless he renounces the desire for sense gratification.
Yeah. So this verse, Krishna is telling how yoga and sannyas are the same. So detached action is same as renunciation, because unless until one renounces the desire for sense gratification, even yogi, one cannot become a yogi also. You remember previously Krishna told Arjun, Tasmad yogi bhava Arjuna. So become a yogi. But without renouncing sense gratification, one cannot become a yogi. So this is very cautioning line for modern yoga practitioners, that many times in modern yoga practitioners, they think that they are being taught, or they think that one can do anything one likes. One can eat meat also, one can engage in illicit sex also, and at the same time one can practice yoga, something called as meditation. But here Krishna clearly says one can never become a yogi unless he renounces the desire for sense gratification. So uh, so sannyas means to become fixed in jnana, characterized by stopping the functions of senses or renouncing the result of action. Yoga is to have mind which is not agitated by the thirst to enjoy sense objects. Therefore, both could mean the same. Both have the same import. In the purport, Prabhupada says, real sannyas yoga or bhakti means that one should know his constitutional position as the living entity and act according to that constitutional position. That means act on the spiritual platform. Further ahead, Prabhupada says that when one is in complete knowledge, one ceases all material sense gratification and renounces all kinds of sense gratificatory activities. So this is practiced by the yogis who restrain the senses from material attachment. So even the yogis, they have to restrain their senses from material attachment. A person in Krishna consciousness has no opportunity to engage his senses in anything which is not for the purpose of Krishna. Why? Because Krishna consciousness person has always engaged his senses in the service of the Lord. So he, as we discussed in the last verse also, his motivation is simply to serve the Lord. So in this way, Krishna conscious person is simultaneously a sannyasi and yogi. Prabhupada is emphasizing again in the purport. So what is the real aim of sannyas? Real aim of sannyas and yoga both is to give up selfish satisfaction and to be prepared to satisfy Supreme Lord. But somebody, Prabhupada says ahead, who has no information of the Supreme Lord, he must be engaged in self-satisfaction. There is no other choice. Either one serves Krishna or one serves Maya. There is no third choice. Always the choice is between these two. So if one is not serving Krishna, that means he must be satisfying his mind and senses. Because Prabhupada says one cannot act on the platform of inactivity. Nobody can be simply a passive neutral person. Either one is serving Krishna. If he's not serving Krishna, means surely he's serving his mind and senses, surely is engaged in sense gratification. So the restraining the senses is not the only constituent into renunciation of sense gratification, but even the desire for sense gratification should be restrained. You remember previously Krishna had told also, that definition of mithyachari. Mithyachari means karmendriyani samyamya yah aste manasa smaran. If somebody has externally given up sense gratification, but internally he's simply meditating on sense objects, so that is not real sannyasi. That is not real renunciation. Real renunciation means one should even give up the desire for sense gratification. So in this way, we have already learned that karma yoga and sankhya yoga or jnana yoga are the same. If you remember in the 4th chapter, Krishna had spoken this, that there is no difference between karma yoga and jnana yoga. Krishna convinced Arjun that karma yoga and jnana yoga are the same. Why? Because they lead to the same goal. Now here we will also learn that sannyasa, renunciation, is same as yoga. Yoga is basically linking oneself with the Supreme Lord. The word yoga comes from the dhatu called yuj. So yuj is what? Yuj is basically connection. So connecting oneself with the Supreme. So in this way, every yogi must be renounced. He must be renounced just as all sannyasis are renounced. So again, as we see that here again the emphasis is given that one has to renounce the desire for sense gratification. One doesn't have to renounce work, but one has to renounce the desire for sense gratification. Without that, yoga cannot be practiced. So in this way, both sannyasis and yogis reject desire for enjoyment. In other words, a yogi cannot be perfect without renouncing the desire for sense gratification. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he also says in this regards, one who has not renounced his inclination to enjoy sense gratification, that is to say, his hankering for material fruits, cannot be a yogi. Like that. Now next verses, Krishna is going to explain how a yoga process is divided into 2 levels, Arurukshu and Arudha. So please recite 3rd verse.
Dheeraj, Vibhuti Prabhu. Dheeraj, Vibhuti Prabhu. Next 4 moments. Okay, Gautam Prabhu.
Arurukshormuneryogam karma karanam uchyate
Karma karanam
yogarudhasya tasyaiva
yogarudasya
samakaranam uchyate.
Karanamukhyate.
For one who is a neophyte in the eightfold yoga system, work is said to be the means, and for one who is already elevated in yoga, cessation of all material activities is said to be the means.
Yeah. So in these first 2 verses, Krishna had told that an Ashtanga yogi should not give up Nishkama Karma Yoga, and that sannyas and yoga are the same. So should Ashtanga yogi practice Nishkama Karma Yoga for his whole life? So that Krishna is going to answer in this verse and the next verse. So this verse, 3rd verse, describes 2 levels of Ashtanga Yoga. First is Yoga Aruruksha. So these terminologies are important. If you are started solving your questions. So there also I think this question is there. What is yoga aruruksha and what is yoga arudha? So yoga aruruksha is basically beginning stage of Ashtanga yoga. So what is this yoga aruruksha stage? Person performs prescribed duties, nishkama karma yoga, and he understands that is the cause of elevation. So while practicing nishkama karma yoga, one cultivates detachments and also practices Ashtanga yoga, doing asanas, etc. So he is beginning stage of Ashtanga yoga basically. He is performing his duties as in Nishkama Karma Yoga level and also practicing certain things like yama, niyama, asana, pranayam, something like that to that extent. So that gradually purifies the heart of the from the fruitive desires. So as we discussed that a yogi should also give up desires also. So how one becomes free from desires? By practicing Nishkama Karma Yoga. And here Ashtanga Yogi, he does some kind of uh, bodily regulations also. Yama, Niyama, Pranayama, Asana and Pranayama. Because that way, person's body becomes regulated also, mind becomes peaceful. Then second stage one advances that where one becomes Yoga Arudha, which is advanced stage. So where when one is completely purified of all material desires, now he can give up Nishkama Karma Yoga stage and practice purely Ashtanga Yoga exclusively. He can exclusively practice Ashtanga Yoga. Then one neither acts for sense gratification nor engages in fruity activities. So that is the stage of steady meditation dhyana. So that is called as Yoga Arudha stage. So there are 8 limbs of Ashtanga Yoga. First is called as Yama. Yama means don'ts or prohibitions or regulations. What a yogi should not do. That is called as first stage of Ashtanga Yoga. Second is Niyama. Niyama is do's. Do's means rules or prescriptions. Yama is don'ts, prohibitions. Niyama is do's, that is prescriptions. Third is asana. So bodily exercises, which many people are doing these days. Fourth is pranayama, breathing control. So that also you all know. Fifth is pratyahara. Pratyahara is withdrawing the senses from sense objects. Person withdraws his senses from sense objects. That is pratyahara. Sixth is dharana. Dharana means fixing the mind on the Lord's form, typically for 12 seconds without any distraction. Then seventh stage is dhyana, that is intensified meditation on the Lord. Typically it is 12 seconds into 12 seconds. That is 144 seconds. So it must be coming like 2.5 minutes or something like that. You know, right? For without any distraction, no mind should not waver. So that is dhyana stage. So dhyana stage one enters into yoga arudha stage. So before coming to dhyana stage, one is in yoga aruruksha stage only. At dhyana level, one can give up one's prescribed duties and engage full time into Ashtanga yoga meditation. And then one advances to the last stage, that is samadhi. Typically at samadhi stage, which is a complete absorption or trance, turiya. So at that stage, one can meditate on the Supreme Lord without any distraction for 12 seconds into 12 seconds into 12 seconds. So that comes out to be something like 24 minutes or something like that, continuously without any distraction. So that is Samadhi stage. So these are the 8 limbs of Ashtanga Yoga. Now in the purport, Prabhupada says, the process of linking oneself with the Supreme is called as yoga. So word yoga means to connect with the Supreme Lord. So Prabhupada gives yoga ladder now. So it's a ladder for attaining the topmost spiritual realization. What is the beginning of the ladder? So we discussed this before also. Is from the lowest material condition of living entity especially Karma Kanda stage, and then rises up to the perfect self-realization in pure spiritual life. So according to various elevations, different parts of the ladder are known by different names. So Karma Kanda, Karma Yoga, Sakam, Nishkam, then Jnana Yoga or Sankhya Yoga, then Dhyana, then comes Ashtanga Yoga, which is Dhyana Yoga also, and further is Bhakti Yoga. So complete ladder is called as Yoga ladder, and it may be divided purpose into three parts, namely Jnana Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. The beginning of the ladder is called Yoga Arurukshu stage, and the highest rung is called Yoga Arudha stage. So Prabhupada explains this Yoga Aruruksha stage, wherein Prabhupada says that the attempts in the beginning to enter into meditation through regulative principles of life and practice of different sitting postures, asanas or bodily exercises are considered to be fruitive material activities. So yama, niyama, asana, these are fruitive activities only, and that's how they are the stages of yoga aruruksha. All these activities lead to achieving perfect mental equilibrium, even pranayama. So they help to lead the person achieving perfect mental equilibrium to control the senses. So that's how one comes to the stage of pratyahara. One becomes bodily fit. So by performing this yama niyama, one becomes restrained from the wrong activities. Also, that helps also to restrain from wrong activities. One also becomes one's body becomes very healthy and fit by asana. One mind comes to equilibrium through pranayama, and in this way one develops complete control over the senses. The mind becomes detached from sense gratification, that is pratyahara. So in this way, when one is accomplished in the practice of meditation, he ceases all disturbing mental activities. So now in this chapter, one typical feature of Srila Prabhupada is that every purport Prabhupada talks, because Prabhupada has very outset only, Prabhupada has clearly said that Ashtanga Yoga is difficult in Kali Yuga. So every purport Prabhupada talks about Krishna consciousness. So he tells about what is this Ashtanga Yoga, and then the latter part Prabhupada talks about directly about Krishna consciousness. So a Krishna conscious person is situated from the beginning on the platform of meditation. Why? Because he always thinks of Krishna. And in this way, his Prabhupada says is in the Yoga Arudha stage. If one is always thinking of Krishna, he's already in the Yoga Arudha stage. And in this way, being constantly engaged in the service of Krishna is considered to have ceased all material activities. So he has already surpassed Yoga Aruruksha stage. Yeah. So in this way, these two stages of Ashtanga Yoga, Yoga Aruruksha, that is beginning stage, and Yoga Arudha, that is advanced stage, are described. So these are further divided into 8 steps. So as we discussed. So in the beginning stage, Yoga Aruruksha stage, one must work. Why? Because he is neither detached to enough nor pure enough to renounce the work. He is not yet pure enough and detached enough to renounce the work. So one can renounce the work only at the advanced stage, that is Yoga Arudha stage. So in this regard, Srila Baldev Vidyabhushan comments that when the yogi has ascended to the achievement of yoga, of dhyana yoga in particular, when in other words he has become fixed in meditation, at that time shama, the cessation of all activities that disturb the mind, becomes the cause of his further advancement. This is what Baldev Vidyabhushan says. Now, of all 8 steps in Ashtanga Yoga, the first 2 are Yama and Niyama. We discuss that. Then there is Asana. So these all stages we have discussed now, up to Samadhi. So Different transcendentalists, they attain distinct kinds of samadhi. In samadhi, the mind and the consciousness are fully focused on the absolute. The jnani focuses on Brahman. So at samadhi stage, what a jnani does, he focuses on Brahman. Patanjali yogi, he focuses on Paramatma, and Bhakti yogi for Krishna. So all these yogis can attain samadhi stage. But a jnana yogi, his samadhi is on Brahman. Ashtanga yogi samadhi is on Paramatma, and Bhakti yogi samadhi is on Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he answers this question. Should Ashtanga yogi perform his prescribed duties as long as he lives? So he says that this third text describes how in the yoga aruruksha beginning stage, one works in Nishkama Karma Yoga while simultaneously practicing Ashtanga Yoga. That purifies his heart. When aspiring yogi becomes elevated in his practice to the point of yoga arudha, so that time he gives up Nishkama Karma Yoga and practices Ashtanga Yoga exclusively. Srila Baldev Vidyabhushan adds that the yoga arudha stage begins at dhyana. So this we discussed, but just we are repeating. The yoga arudha stage beginning at stage of dhyana, which is described in the next verse now. Fourth verse will describe the yoga arudha stage. So please recite fourth verse.
Really, can you repeat that Gyan Yogi, Ashtanga Yogi, and Bhakti Yogi? Where do they meditate? Ashtanga Yogi is for Brahman, right? And Ashtanga.
Jnana yogi meditates on Brahman, Ashtanga yogi on Paramatma, and Bhakti yogi on Krishna, personality of Godhead.
Thank you.
Bhagwan. Okay, so please recite fourth verse.
Himanshu Prabhu.
Yes, Roji. यदा हीनेन्द्रियार्थेषु
यदा हीनेन्द्रियार्थेषु
न कर्मष्व अनुसाजते
न कर्मस्व अनुषज्यते
सर्वसंकल्प सन्यासी
सर्वसंकल्प
सन्यासी
योगारूढ़स्तदो तदोच्यते. Translation: a person is said to be elevated in yoga when, having renounced all material desires, he neither acts for sense gratification nor engages in fruitive activities.
Yeah.
Purport?
No. So this is the fourth verse, which is describing the yoga arudha stage. So purport Prabhupada says that when a person is engaged fully in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, he is pleased in himself, and thus he is no longer engaged in sense gratification or fruitive activities. Within himself, he experiences so much of joy. So Ramante Yogino Anante Satyanande Chidatmani. A devotee or a yogi who is in Krishna consciousness, he derives so much of pleasure from within. Why? Because of being situated on the platform of soul, who has got eternal position as Satchidananda. So because of that happiness which one derives from within by thinking of Krishna, by remembering of Krishna, and also by rendering the service to Krishna through chanting and ninefold devotional processes, because of that, what happens? He is no longer engaged in sense gratification or fruitive activities. But that doesn't mean that this person is very passive. A devotee, Krishna conscious person, Prabhupada says, he can do everything for the satisfaction of Krishna and thereby be perfectly detached from sense gratification. So he acts, but he acts for the satisfaction of Krishna. He may do anything. He may even kill a person. Like Arjun is going to kill now so many Kauravas and all the parties of Kauravas. Arjun is going to kill. It's one sense, it's a very abominable activity, but he can do it for Krishna with perfectly detached from any sense gratification. So Prabhupada says, but one who has no such realization must mechanically try to escape material desire before being elevated to the top rung of the yoga ladder. And that's what is Ashtanga Yoga, wherein one is mechanically trying to escape material desires through yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, all these processes like that. So, owing to his higher spiritual taste, the yogi renounces both traditions and desire pursuits. So, in the he attains the Aruda platform. Such yogi continue his work, which mostly consists of his prescribed duties, not out of attachment, but to set a proper example. So sometimes even a yoga aruda person also may continue to perform his duties, although he can give up his duties, but he may do so to set an example. Do you remember again Krishna had spoken something like this before to Arjun, that even if you consider yourself to be completely purified of all material desires, and in this way you need not work, still you should perform work in order to set an example. And whose example Krishna had quoted? Do you remember?
Janak Maharaj.
Janak Maharaj.
Yes, Janak Maharaj example Krishna had quoted. So similarly, yoga aruda person also may sometimes continue his prescribed duties just to set an example for others. Okay, so please recite 5th chapter, 5th verse.
कार्तिक महापात्र प्रभु
उद्धरेदात्मना आत्मानम्
Uddharet atmanatmanam
नात्मानम् अवसादयेत्
natmanam avasadhayet
आत्मैव हि आत्मनो बन्धुर्
atmaiva hi atmano
आत्मैव रिपुरात्मनः
atmaiva ripuratmanah.
Translation: one must deliver himself with the help of his mind and not degrade himself. The mind is the friend of the conditioned soul and his enemy as well.
Yeah. So mind control and detachment from objects are requirements to come to the stage of yoga aruda. Two requirements are there. If one wants to come to yoga aruda stage, advanced in yoga, then mind control and detachment from sense objects are the two requirements. So now these two verses, 5th verse and 6th verse, Krishna describes the importance of mind control, and in this way he discourages Arjun, indicating the impracticality of the path. So please read the purport. These are two are very important verses even for a bhakti yogi also. So please read the purport.
Yes, Prabhu. Purport. The word Atma denotes body, mind, and soul, depending upon different circumstances. In the yoga system, the mind and the conditioned soul are especially important. Since the mind is the central point of yoga practice, Atma refers here to the mind. The purpose of the yoga system is to control the mind and to draw it away from the attachment to sense objects. It is stressed herein that the mind must be so trained that it can deliver the conditioned soul from the mire of nescience. In material existence, one is subjected to the influence of the mind and the senses. In fact, the pure soul is entangled in the material world because the mind is involved with the false ego, which desires to lord it over the nature. Therefore, the mind should be trained so that it will not be attracted by the glitter of material nature, and in this way, the conditioned soul may be saved. One should not degrade oneself by attraction to sense objects. The more one is at
So here in the verses, the word Atma has come. Generally, we understand the word Atma means soul, but actually in the Vedic scripture, the Atma also means body. Atma also means mind. Sometimes means false ego. Sometimes Atma means also intellect. So based on particular context used, think of Atma is soul. Atma also is to use oneself to be body. Sometimes the Atma is Uddhare Atmanam The word Atma refers to the mind. Why? Because mind control is very exact, Krishna. So, yeah,
Can you repeat for like past 1.5 minutes? Like because your voice was breaking. Actually, your network bandwidth is new. I think we should keep the camera off and continue with it.
Yeah, Prabhuji has left. I think he's out of the meeting.
So your voice is breaking.
now is it now is it okay?
It's breaking for me. Oh, yeah, very much breaking.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhuji, audible, Prabhuji, but your voice was breaking.
Oh, I'll rejoin. I'll rejoin the meeting. Wait a minute.
Yes, yes, please.
Yeah. So we were discussing how the word Atma refers to different objects uh, based on the person's identity. So here, because for a yogi, mind is very important factor. So word Atma refers to mind over here. So Prabhupada says in the purport how the purpose of yoga system is to control the mind and draw it away from attachment to sense objects. So this is very important even for a devotee also, that the mind must be so trained that it can deliver the conditioned soul from mire of nescience. So one should elevate oneself through one's mind, not degrade oneself. So basically the spirit soul, he has acquired the mind because of his false ego, because of his misidentification with this material existence. Now, somehow he has acquired the mind. He cannot get rid of mind so easily. So now what one can do, one has to train one's mind in such a way that it will not be attracted by the glitter of material nature. And in this way, the conditioned soul may also be saved. So the training to be given to the mind. So there are various ways a devotee gives training to the mind. So sometimes a devotee may cajole the mind. Any song you remember wherein there is a cajoling to the mind?
तुष्टम तुम्हें किसी का वैष्णव
It is not cajoling, it is chastising. Bhaja hure mana Shri Nanda Nandana Abhaya Charanarandare. Isn't it? In this way, he's trying to convince the mind. Oh, please, mind, do not, become like this. Try to worship Supreme Lord. Then one should chastise the mind. So the devotees quoted some verses, that Tushtaman Tomi Kisera Vaishnav Pratisthara Tare Nirjane Rajare, like that. So in this way, one can chastise the mind. And what Srila Bhakti Thakur would say, what a devotee should do?
Beat the mind with the shoes.
Beat the mind with the shoes only once?
1,000 times.
How many times in a day?
before sleeping and
Srila Bhakti Thakur would say that in the morning. Yes. So in the morning, he should beat the mind with the shoes 100 times. And in the evening, he should beat the mind with a broom 100 times. So in this way, one should train the mind. One should train the mind to act in the Krishna conscious way. So either by convincing, cajoling, counseling the mind, and by beating the mind also. So in this way, mind should be so trained that it will not be attracted by the glitter of material nature. And in this way, conditioned soul may be saved. So one should try to counsel also our mind. One should give counseling to the mind. Oh mind, do not run after sense objects. Do not run after this illusion Maya. Because this mind can make one's life very blissful or hellish. So both ways. That's why Prabhupada says that the word he is used. The word he is used for what? It is a must. So further Prabhupada quotes Amruta Bindu Upanishad. Mana evahi manusyanam karanam bandha mokshayoho bandhaya vishaya sango mukte nirvishayam manaha. For a man, mind is the cause of bondage and mind is the cause of liberation. Mind absorbed in sense objects is the cause of bondage. Mind detached from the sense objects is the cause of liberation. So in this way, basically, a most formidable enemy in one sense. Of course, previously Krishna spoke lust is the most formidable enemy. But here we can say in a most basic form, the most formidable problem of a devotee is mind. Due to mind, he imagines so many problems. Due to mind, a person imagines so many needs and hankers for so many things. So in this way, the mind is the biggest trouble giver for a conditioned soul. And that's why he has to learn to train his mind. He has to learn to control his mind with proper association, with proper sincere practice, with proper sadhana, with different ways. So that way, the person can be saved If one becomes the slave of the mind and simply act based on the mind's demands, then one gets into durgati actually. So one degrades oneself because of this thing. So we have seen even so many devotees, and in case we can see in our own lives also, it is only simply because listening to the mind and becoming simply the follower of mind, coming on the mental platform, that one degrades oneself. So therefore, mind which is always engaged in Krishna consciousness is the cause of supreme liberation. So we have to try to engage our mind also in the service of the Lord. So uh, one must renounce the desire for sense gratification, and in this way control the mind. So please recite the sixth verse.
Please, Karuna Brajesh. Okay, Lalit Prabhu.
Yes. बन्धुरात्मन्मनस्तस्य
बन्धुरात्मात्मनस्तस्य
येनात्मैवात्मना जितः
येनात्मना जितः
अनात्मनस्तु शत्रुत्वे
अनात्मनस्तु शत्रुत्वे
वर्तयितात्मैव शत्रुवत्.
वर्तेतात्मैव शत्रुवत्.
Translation: For him who has conquered the mind is the best of friends, but for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy.
Yes. Please read purport.
The purpose of practicing Eightfold Yoga is to control the mind in order to make it a friend in discharging the human mission. Unless the mind is controlled, the practice of yoga for show is simply a waste of time. One who cannot control his mind lives always with the greatest enemy, and thus his life and its mission are spoiled. The constitutional position of the living entity is to carry out the order of the superior. As long as one's mind remains an unconquered enemy, one has to serve the dictation of lust, anger, avarice, illusion, etc. But when the mind is conquered, one voluntarily agrees to abide by the dictations of the personality of Godhead, who is situated within the heart of everyone as Paramatma. Real yoga practice
Yes, that's it. Yes, so this is what is control of mind is such an important thing. Prabhupada is telling that if one is not controlled with the mind, then one is the most with one's enemy. And if one knows outrightly, if one knows that once there is one's enemy, then one will be so extremely careful. Just imagine one's enemy is just within the same room, but one knows that this is the enemy. Then when one will be very, very careful, But still, that is also a very dangerous position, right? If one is staying in an enemy only in the same room, my God, it will be so dangerous. But more dangerous will be if the enemy comes in the disguise of a friend. He acts as if he's a friend, and in this way, he tries to act, and inside his enemy, although he is disguising himself as a friend. Then one is staying in the most dangerous position. Why? Because one is bewildered, thinking him to be a friend. Similarly, our mind of a conditioned soul, it promises him pleasure by instigating him for those activities which are not good for his spiritual life. And he proposes lot of sense gratification plans. And in this way, he proposes that I am your best friend because I am going to give you happiness by such a thing. But then, in this way, mind makes conditioned soul do lot of activities which are not accordance with Krishna consciousness, and in this way, mind degrades the soul. So this way, although mind disguises himself as a friend, he actually, is doing a inimical word activities towards a person. So one who trusts such a mind is in a very, very dangerous position. That's why Prabhupada says he's living with the greatest enemy. And in this way, his life and mission are spoiled. So, why? Because such an unconquered mind, it makes one slave of all these things which Prabhupada mentions. Lust, anger, avarice, illusion, etc. But when the mind is conquered, then he becomes our best friend. Same mind, when it is conquered, he acts as a friend and he helps us to become elevated. He can think of Krishna, and in this way, he can engage himself in Krishna's service. He abides by the dictations of the personality of Godhead situated within the heart of everyone as Paramatma. So there was one Chopati's pantomime show of me and my mind. It is very nice, which tells how in the beginning the mind is very great enemy, but if one practices nicely, controls the mind, so Bhakti Yoga, eventually mind becomes the best friend, and such a mind becomes also the cause of liberation. Mana eva hi manushyana karanam bandha mokshayoho. The same mind can act as one's friend and become the cause of one's liberation as well. So in this way, this is the real yoga. So a mind who follows the dictations of the Supreme Lord, that's why the mind should be trained to obey the orders of the Supreme Lord, the dictations of the Supreme Lord, and in this way mind can be controlled. Also, it should be engaged in various services of the Supreme Lord. That way mind can be controlled, and in the beginning mind will resist, but eventually mind will be controlled, and then he will agree to follow, he will resonate. He will not only agree, he will also help us to uplift ourselves to the platform of pure Krishna consciousness. So that's how mind should be controlled. Of course, I am also trying. I am not reached the perfection stage or something like that. I am also struggling with my own mind. I must admit here, because we are talking on this subject. I should admit that I am also trying. But this is what we are discussing so that it will help us to control our mind. So we will take just one more verse. Please recite 7th verse.
Mohan Saka.
Yes, bro. One.
Haribol, somebody is reciting?
Sorry. It was चितात्मनं प्रशान्तस्य परमात्मा समाहिता शीतोष्ण सुख दुःखेषु तथा मानापमानयोः For one who has conquered the mind, the super soul is already reached. For he has attained tranquility. To such a man, happiness and distress, heat and cold, honor and dishonor are all the same.
Yeah. So in this verse, from 7th to 9th, Krishna describes the symptoms of a person in yoga root stage. So the glory of somebody who controlled mind, Krishna says that if somebody has learned to control the mind, super soul is already reached. Can you imagine? That means he has already attained super soul. This is what is the glory of controlling mind. If somebody becomes controlled in his mind, he very quickly attains the Supreme Lord. So purport Prabhupada says that one has to abide by superior dictations. So when the mind is fixed on the superior nature, he has no alternative but to follow the dictation of the Supreme. So we discussed before also that above mind is intelligence. So through intelligence, which is nourished by the dictations of the Supreme Lord, which comes through Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, such literatures, when the mind abides by those dictations of the Supreme Lord, through the Vedic literatures to scriptures and to the words of acharyas, then one becomes controlled in his mind. One's mind is fixed. And in this way, one attains the Supreme Lord. So in this way, Prabhupada says, mind must admit some superior dictation and follow it. So if one is controlled in the mind, one automatically follows the dictation of Paramatma or Super Soul. Because this transcendental position is at once achieved by one who is in Krishna consciousness, the devotee of the Lord is unaffected by the dualities of material existence. This stage is practical samadhi or absorption in the Supreme. So this is what Lord is telling. Okay, so we will stop here and we'll continue next week with the 8th verse. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Granthara Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Yeah.
So there was one question about what is the connection between Jnana Yoga and Ashtanga Yoga. So Jnana Yoga is a one step below Ashtanga Yoga. We know yoga ladder begins with Karma Kanda, Karma Yoga, then Jnana Yoga, and then there is Ashtanga Yoga. So Jnana Yogi, after his detailed research of the Jnana, he learns that the goal of perfection of life can be attained through meditation on the Supreme. And in this way, he takes to Ashtanga Yoga and he starts meditating on the Supreme Lord like that. So his culmination of his knowledge is understanding that one should meditate on the Supreme Lord. And that's how he takes to Ashtanga Yoga. And he goes, that is the next rung in the yoga ladder. From Jnana Yoga, one goes to the next rung, that is Ashtanga Yoga. All right. So can we stop here, Prabhu?
Prabhuji, well, just one thing in that. So Jnani Yogis also renunciate. Means they also, they also don't marry and they do Himalayas like that something.
Yeah, that's what they do. Sannyas
Even
is
in
typically
initial,
for a Jnani Yogi.
before taking to Ashtanga path.
Sannyas is typically for a Jnani Yogi. When we discuss sannyas and yoga, sannyas is basically Jnana Yogi, yoga is Ashtanga Yogi. So Shankaracharya says that's why before, first qualification for Jnana Yoga is sannyas. First of all, you have to take sannyas, he says. Shankaracharya.
Oh, okay, Prabhuji.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. Hari Bol. Meet next week.
Thank you, Guruji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.